Thank you very much, Jen. Appreciate that. So it is great to be with everybody today, and I wanted just to get started by a shout out to our 3 award recipients, Claudia, Nina, and Kellen again, but also, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't give another loud shout out to Judge Newman as well. Yep. I would also like to pause at the very beginning today to just say a shout out to all of the federal workers that have been going through a lot. And I'm going to need your energy today, this awesome packed room, because I was up really late last night in Charlotte at a retirement party for somebody. I had to get up early this morning for a 6 a.m. flight, and I didn't know whether or not there was going to be TSA agents there at 4:45 in the morning. And the entire shift reported in Charlotte at 4:45 in the morning when I walked through. So I spent the time trying to say thank you to every one of those agents that was there not getting paid, and we should all do the same. And then the last thing before getting started, Jen, this room is a testament to what you are building. It's a testament to what can happen when people of goodwill come together to make change happen. It is a testament to individual action, and the extra community grants, the moment of impact grants that are going out are really astounding and incredible. So congratulations. So Jen used some pretty heavy words when she was up here, right? You've got to counterbalance the weight, numbness, being a little bit overwhelmed. I think the 37th month of 2025 or something like that, right? And so I was kind of given a challenge that this should be this particular luncheon is really a celebration. And it is also very much a call to keep on building. And so today, I wanted, in that spirit of this event, you got to play on words, in the spirit of this. All right, you all got to keep up with me, people. We got things to do here. In the spirit of this event, I wanted to give you kind of 5 thoughts around ways of being as a means of answering that call in this moment, and to share some stories of the heroes and sheroes who have shaped who I am, and who have shaped my journey, and hopefully the lessons I've learned from them you can take with you as a gift today. Now, I said 5, but over the course of the last week, I kind of came across a 6th one. Last Friday, I had the occasion of going to the anthem and hearing Jean-Baptiste. And when I went in, it was one of the anthems all about standing, right? And you're like, hey, I got to stand for 3 hours. But the time flew by. And the cool thing about it was they had designed the stage as a tent. And there was a huge banner there, and the tent, and the banner said, "Under our tent, there is revival and joy." There is revival and joy. And then I happened to serve on the board of a group called the Children's Defense Fund, and we just had our celebration of joy earlier in the week. And at that event, the theme was from Alice Walker. And what she was fond of saying and wrote a book about was, hard times require furious dancing. Hard times require furious dancing. And so for the next 20 minutes, I was hoping that we might have a little bit of revival and joy. I was hoping that we might do some furious dancing. And as part of all of that, one of the things that I would just underscore for everybody in this moment is that joy and dancing are forms of restoration. They are also forms of resilience. And they are forms, very much forms, of resistance. So for today, you now have a sixth one, which is to be joyful as part of our story moving forward. Also, in the spirit of a little bit of energy, I'm going to come down and hang out with you all, if that's okay. So, can you guys hear me still? Okay, great. So to get started, folks have heard me talk about my family on different occasions. My full name is Martin William Rodgers. I don't have time to go into that whole full name, but I will just tell you that we are descended from a slave plantation not so far from here in Broadnax, Virginia. And I go in a lot of times to tell you about my grandfather and our last name Rodgers, and the power to name is the power to define. But that's a story for another day. I also talk a lot about my third great-grandmother, who was that slave on that plantation, and she endured so that I might endeavor. She endured hell on earth so that I might endeavor, so that I might be here today in this room with all these amazing people, carrying on, carrying forward. Recently, I had the occasion of getting one of those pings that y'all get sometimes when you're on Facebook. You know what I'm talking about. Some strange person pings you and you're like, hey, cuz, been trying to reach out to you. And you're like, okay, they're reaching out for money, there's some scam going on, whatever. But this particular individual said he'd been trying to track me down for 2 years. And it turns out he actually was my cousin. Wasn't a fake, wasn't a fraud, this is the real man. And his name was Larry Lawrence. And I finally got to meet him, and he connected the dots in our family tree even further back. And that's my beautiful wife and one of my beautiful daughters. They cut off my other daughter, I'm not sure why. So that is May, you're missing Zora, and that's my wife. But anyway, that's at the Library of Congress, and that's our family tree. And it was also featured on CBS Sunday Morning. And the reason I tell you this is because Lawrence connected us not back to that third great-grandmother, but to my eighth and ninth great-grandmother that came over on a ship, together. And that ship embarked with 181 passengers, and 156 made it. And that ship landed in Yorktown. And that ship was what brought us here. And I share that story with you, again, just to tell you, we've all had a journey. And we've all come through. And we will continue to move through. And I share the story as well in the spirit of a phrase that was just recently shared with me that I love. And that is the notion that everyone in this room, we are challenged to be a good ancestor. We are challenged to be a good ancestor. Which means what you're doing today, you got to think about what's going to happen in the future. And be planning not just for this moment, but for the moments and the generations yet to come. So as we get started, the first goal of being about this moment is to start thinking as a good ancestor. Building cathedrals. Building and planting trees, the shade of which you will never enjoy. So let's be good ancestors. Next up, this is one of my mentors, a guy by the name of Father Theodore Hesburgh. And there's a great movie, if you ever get a chance to watch it on Amazon, called Hesburgh, one ordinary man, one extraordinary life. And you see him on Time magazine, and that's him with Dr. King that we're going to talk about in a second. But the first part of his story, and a remarkable man of grace. But the first part of his story, I share with you that picture with him and Dr. King. And the reason I share it is because that is Soldiers Field. And when Dr. King and he are standing in Soldiers Field, it's because he had the courage, when Dr. King called, to show up. To show up. When all of the other officials in Illinois and all the other officials in Chicago didn't want to have anything to do with Dr. King. Because Dr. King, at the time, had changed his message. And it started to say, I'm not going to just be about civil rights, but also economic justice. And I'm not just going to try to make change happen in the South, but in the North. And they didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. We have these illusions, right, with the holiday and everything else, that Dr. King was always popular. We temper his message. But at that moment, nobody would stand with him. So he called Father Ted. And Father Ted said, I'll stand with you. So the question for all of us in the room is, who will you stand with? And where will you stand? At this moment. At this moment. Now, Father Ted and Dr. King knew each other because of another extraordinary act. Father Ted Hesburgh, who was the president of my alma mater, he was charged with being the lead of the first U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. And that U.S. Commission on Civil Rights was designed to fail. It was set up by Eisenhower with 3 Southerners and 3 Northerners. And the goal, have you all ever heard of commissions in the government that didn't work? This one was designed not to work. And what ended up happening instead was Father Ted brought these 3 Southerners and 3 Northerners together in Land O'Lakes. And together, they had a little bit too much alcohol. And together, they got to know each other, their common humanity, their families, their friends, their stories, their aspirations. And they became friends. And these 6 individuals would get to know each other and find that they all had the same common passion for fishing. And they would become fishers of men. And those 6 individuals would come together and they would deliver, after going around the country and learning and seeing what was actually happening in the country, the unanimous recommendation for the most sweeping civil rights legislation, voting rights legislation, and housing legislation in our history. And President Eisenhower, greeting Father Hesburgh at the office in the White House, would say, "What the F have you done to me?" And that would become the framework for all the civil rights legislation to come. Be courageous fishermen. Reach out to folks you may disagree with or think you may disagree with. Build the bridge. And together, continue to be fishers of men. Courageous. This next individual was also my boss, a guy by the name of Senator Harris Wofford. Senator Wofford was the co-founder of the Peace Corps and eventually the co-founder of AmeriCorps. He would also serve on the Points of Light Foundation board. And Senator Wofford also had the occasion of working with Dr. King and with Father Ted. And he has a unique claim on American history that not a lot of folks know about. And if you ever get the chance to read Parting the Waters or 9 Days, it tells you of his story and of the call that changed the world. At the time, Dr. King was in Atlanta, and he was challenged by young students who didn't think he was progressive enough, didn't think he was bad enough, didn't think he was willing to put his own body on the line and get arrested. And young people, they're idealistic, right? They've got it. They didn't care he was a national leader. They're like, what you going to do for me? And so he said, I will march with you. And they all got arrested. But only one of the folks that got arrested didn't get out. And that was Dr. King. And they sent him further south. And he was convinced as they sent him further south to another jail and then yet again to another jail that they were going to kill him. He said it was the closest he ever felt to death. And so all of a sudden it becomes national news. And the whole country is watching. And Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy are embroiled in an unbelievably close election. And nobody wants to tick off the Southern Democrats, and nobody wants to show support for African Americans for fear they will lose the South and lose the election. Martin's wife, Coretta Scott King, was 9 months pregnant, about to have their next child. She knows her husband's been arrested. She knows he's been moved further south, and she shares the same concern. A friend of Senator Wofford's, Harris Wofford, he begins to wonder, what can I do? And he goes around the entire campaign apparatus. He risks his job, his future, and he gets to John F. Kennedy, right as he's about to board a plane in Chicago. And he says, you know what? I know this is crazy, I know this is nuts, but would you just pick up the phone? Would you just pick up the phone and call Coretta? And John F. Kennedy says, sure, that sounds like what a decent person would do. And so he calls Coretta, and he says, hey, I know what's going on. I want you to know I'm paying attention. I want you to know I'm concerned. And that's it. And all hell breaks loose. And the campaign denies that the call came and happened because Robert F. Kennedy didn't know about it as the campaign manager. And he has to retract that. But all of a sudden, everything starts to change. And suddenly, even though at that point in time the majority of African Americans were Republican, the party of Lincoln, everything would change. And Daddy King, who had already endorsed Richard Nixon, would pull back that endorsement and say, you know what? If this young man has the courage to call my daughter, to care, to show compassion, to show kindness, then I'm taking every vote I can take and putting it behind him. Nixon would later say, I lost this election because of a damn phone call. But what does it teach us? Empathy matters. Compassion matters. And it has to be part of how we lead and how we be in the moments ahead. Almost done, folks. Last couple stories. Hanging in? All right. So this is Justice Sotomayor. In one of our last One of our last ideas is about this notion of being present. So I'm ashamed to say that I had not been to the Supreme Court. And I had a chance to go meet her. And you go into the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is designed, folks, to scare the crap out of you. There's alabaster and wood and great decisions on walls and gavels, and you got to go through these folks have lifetime appointments, so you got to go through 3 different levels of security to get to the chambers, right? And so I keep going through, and I'm getting more and more nervous, and what am I doing? Why are we having this conversation? What's going to happen? And so I keep going and going, get through the last security checkpoint, go into her chambers, and there she is waiting to meet me. Now, when you're nervous, you're not the brightest bulb in the plant. So I was like, then it finally dawned on me afterwards that they probably called her from the last security checkpoint that I was coming. But anyway, finally figured that out. But the whole point is, she was there to meet me. And she welcomed me in, and we sat down on the couch, and she had baked Christmas cookies. And we're Accenture, right? So we do our homework. So I knew she couldn't even eat those cookies because she's a severe, severe, severe diabetic who almost died 3 times as a child because of her diabetes. But she had baked Christmas cookies and offered cookies and tea. And we sat and we talked for an entire hour. And there were none of these stupid devices, the phones that everybody's got. No beepers, no interruption by the EA, no interruptions at all. Just talking, recognizing our common humanity. Maya Angelou is fond of saying, people will forget what you say. They will even forget what you do, but they will never forget how you make them feel. How you make them feel. And she made me feel 10 feet tall. Made me feel listened to. And I'm a nobody, folks, and she's a Supreme Court justice. Right? Your presence is a present. Your presence is a present, a gift. And in this moment, that gift is required more now than ever. Showing up, getting rid of the damn devices, being human, connecting, which is what the Arlington Community Foundation is all about. Connection. We have to not only make sure people see us, not only make sure people hear us, but in this day and age, we have to make sure that they feel us. And these last 3, and we'll close. John Lewis, we worked together to do and create the King National Holiday of Service. In the middle is a remarkable woman of grace. That's her portrait from the National Portrait Gallery. My old boss, Dr. Marion Wright Edelman. And lastly, President George Bush, who I had the honor of working with on the Points of Light Foundation. And all 3 of these folks encourage us to be hopeful. And they encourage us to serve. And they encourage us to show up. And they encourage us to give a damn. And they encourage us to give our time and our talent and our treasure. And to be better. And to hear the better angels of our nature. When I was working with Congressman Lewis, we'd get depressed all the time and we'd never think that the bill would get done. And he was always optimistic. And this was a guy, right, that had put his life on the line time and time again. Always leading from the front. When leading from the front meant you were the one putting yourself and your body in harm's way. Not how we talk about leading from the front casually now, but actually putting your life on the line. And one of the things he would always tell us when we were down trying to get this bill done, is that leadership requires the constancy of hope and the consistency of optimism. The constancy of hope and consistency of optimism. Dr. Edelman was the first black woman lawyer in the state of Mississippi who went there 1 year after Medgar Evers had been assassinated in his driveway. She still came, and she stayed. And over the next 50 years would fight for children and for civil rights. Dr. Edelman was fond of saying, service is the rent we pay for living. Service is the rent we pay for living. How many folks have mortgages? How many folks have rental payments? That stuff just doesn't magically happen at the end of the month, people. You got to be working towards that every day. And regardless of our stage of life and where we are, that's what she's saying. It's required of what a good life means. And then lastly, folks, President Bush. When he went to do his inaugural speech, they told him to take out this line about 1,000 points of light. Too soft, too weak, and he insisted on having it in. Because he was a person of hope, a person of optimism, who believed in the powers of individuals to serve and to make a difference and to change their communities, change their country, and change the world. And when you think about a point of light, we are reminded of a song, which is This Little Light of Mine. This Little Light of Mine. This Little Light of Mine was the second most popular song, second most used song in the civil rights movement. And you would sing it right before you were going to go out on a march, the night before, as you were trying to rally and muster up the strength to show up that next day. And so the reason that song was sung is when you sang it, you were committing that you were going to be there the next day. And trust me, folks, you didn't want to show up if no one else was around. There was strength in numbers. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, I'm going to let it shine. And eventually that shine meant you were not only showing up yourself, but you were going to bring your kids, because you had to try to sear the conscience of a nation. How many of us would have that courage today? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. I'm going to let it shine. The Arlington Community Foundation gives us a chance to shine. This is our moment. Let's seize it. Thank you.